Hi, this is Malvina Miller Complainville, and I'm here with my colleague, Willie Kotas, who is going to talk to us about the Kellogg application and interview process this season. So Willie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm wearing purple and life doesn't get better than that.
Fantastic. So Willie, can you give us a quick overview of your background for our listeners?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. Sometimes I struggle with that. I'm a product of the working class, the Rust Belt, the grandson of Polish and Hungarian peasants who immigrated to the United States and first generation college student. And growing up, I didn't benefit from one of the things that I wish I had known about, which was the idea of informational interviewing and work and getting a lot of mentoring from other people. So I went to college without ever having really had any contact with white collar professionals, came out thinking that I was going to someday want to go to law school, probably because I'd never spoken to a lawyer up to that point. Went into the Peace Corps, raised rabbits for 2 years in Ecuador, and bounded out of that experience straight into Kellogg.
Did you say you raised rabbits?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it's not something I put on my business card. I raised rabbits and guinea pigs and taught courses in Ecuador to farmers on small animal husbandry.
Okay.
Is the technical term for it. And went to Kellogg after that, due to the fact that I'd spoke to some executives in Ecuador and found out through that when I started these meetings, I didn't know the difference between marketing and accounting, to be sincere. And I felt my heart tugging me towards marketing. I went to look through college catalogs and found that Kellogg had a very highly ranked program in marketing, and also Northwestern's team colors were my favorites, which are white. White and purple. So I ended up at Kellogg, and afterwards had a career of over 3 decades in services, where I zigzagged between marketing and consulting, worked in different service industries such as airlines, financial services, spent 8 years running employee engagement surveys throughout Latin America. But I guess the one consistent thing about my career was the fact that I hardly ever worked in the United States over that period of time. So, my passport had work visas from the Netherlands, England, Chile, Peru, Spain, Germany. So I became a very international American. Right now I'm an American citizen, a naturalized Brazilian, and I'm studying Hungarian to try to qualify for Hungarian citizenship next year. So what I found out through my career that I really enjoyed doing was teaching as an adjunct and mentoring the younger professionals on my team. I ended up being I think more of a model alum than I was a model student from Kellogg, in that I led, I was a cereal club leader, cereal not as in Kellogg cornflakes, but the word starting with an S, in Peru, Miami, and Brazil. Ended up being hired by Kellogg as their first and only director level hire outside the United States. Worked for Kellogg from 2013 onward for about 3 years, where I had a role where I was doing info sessions for the full-time program, recruiting for the executive MBA program, and increasing Kellogg's placement in the Latin American media, as far as professors being interviewed and academic articles being published. So all of that gave me a real fascination with the idea of admissions, consulting, and career coaching. I came back to the States, did a year-long program at the University of Miami in coaching, and have since been working not only helping people get into Kellogg, but really any top-tier business school they'd like to do. And I found it to be a very fulfilling profession in the sense that helping people get the most out of their potential, to become more introspective, to figure out how to position themselves in memorable and authentic ways is really been something that I've found to be fulfilling. And fortunately, my skill set also, I think, backs that up to make me successful with the candidates I partner with.
I think your clients must benefit greatly from the variety of exposure you've had with industries and functions, and having lived in different cities throughout your career. That's just such rich information that you can share with your clients, and that informs how you coach as well.
Right, I think it does, and growing up as someone that doesn't look to bring any diversity to the table, I can tell you from having lived in so many geographies and had worked in so many different functions that I actually can pull that off.
Fantastic, fantastic. So Willie, can you tell us about the Kellogg application process and what that looks like, and everything that happens before the interviews specifically?
Sure. The application process, I think, is pretty transparent. That hasn't really changed that much over the years. What probably has changed are the number of options that the candidates thinking about applying to Kellogg have. The most common route through the program is the 2-year, 6-quarter program. But if you have studied business, or if you over the last 5 years have taken 6 what are considered 6 core courses, you're welcome to apply to a 12-month program, the 1-year program at Kellogg, which is designed for people that really aren't doing a career pivot and don't need the summer internship to get credibility for their 2nd-year interviews. There's also a triple M, which used to be more of a MBA combined with a master's in engineering. It's still a degree that involves the McCormick School of Engineering, but now it's around design thinking. So anyone interested in working in innovation, product management might benefit from that program. And Kellogg recently launched an MBA, which is focused much more on business analytics. It's a 1-year MBA, the use of analytics, technology, and such. A very innovative program, and it's something that anyone that's interested in the tech sphere might benefit from also. So the admissions process is I think quite standard. There are 2 essay questions with you send in transcripts, letters of recommendation, etc. And
you have the videos as well, right?
Yeah. After submitting your application, you're sent an invite to participate in something that I think people consider to be much more stressful than it should, which is recording videos, just like Malvina and I are doing right now. Where in years past, Kellogg has had standardized questions plus a random question that will be thrown at the candidate. This year, I think it's a lot easier in the sense that they ask a question, basically, what have you learned during the past year due to the pandemic and protests for racial justice, and how has that changed your outlook on life? So you're able to very well prepare for those interviews. And the other thing that happens after you click submit is that you'll be set up with, in general, an alumni interview. In the past, how it's worked is that if you live in the Chicago area, you don't have the option to visit campus and have an admissions team interview or be interviewed by a 2nd-year student who's on the admissions team. You would always do an alumni interview. Most people around the world tend to be set up matched with an alum who has volunteered to do interviews. And Kellogg used to be the only program that interviewed everybody. And I think some other schools do that now also. But those are really the only 2 things that happen post-application.
Okay. And those interviews, those matches with the alumni, is that based on industry interest, or where the person is working, the industry that they're working currently, or how is that done? Or is that mostly geographical?
It's mostly geographical. I did them for over 20 years, and there seemed to be no rhyme or reason at times how they matched me with candidates, other than the fact we're in the same city. Now, due to the pandemic, all the interviews are being conducted virtually.
Yeah.
So we're through Zoom with candidates. So the geographic spread is a lot larger. I was working with someone in Toronto who was interviewed by Kellogg Alum in Vancouver, and that kind of thing never would have happened before.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I could see that. Do you see other ways that the interviews or the application process has changed this year? So you mentioned that videos that that the candidate has to record, the 3 questions are now shared with the candidate. So that's one difference. And then you have the Zoom call with the alumni. Um, with those changes, do you think that that the content of the material that the student, or not the student, the candidate is providing admissions, is that going to be evaluated any differently compared to years before? Or what are your thoughts on that? This is a question that I often get.
I think the switch from in-person interviewing to Zoom interviewing actually has benefits for people who live in cities, states, or countries where there aren't other alums, and people that weren't planning on visiting campus. Before, they would have had their interview waived, so they wouldn't have the opportunity to meet with an alum and both ask questions and answer questions. And now, since it's virtual, even if you're living in a remote part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you would be able to have a Kellogg interview. So there's the plus on that side. The other thing is, I think candidates tend to overestimate the power of the interviewer as far as moving the needle one way and the other. I always felt that the interview I was doing as an alum was probably more of a filter to keep out people, really bad apples out of the cultural barrel of Kellogg, people who wouldn't fit in very well, more than feeling that I could actually push someone over the finish line by giving a really strong recommendation.
And so you're speaking to cultural fit more?
Yeah, I think you're speaking to more cultural fit, because the other thing to keep in mind, if you're farming out the alumni, if you're farming out admissions interviews to hundreds, if not thousands of alumni interviewers over every admission cycle, the standardization of how they view candidates is going to be very skewed, right? So I think it's a good idea that they don't give too much weight to the alumni interviews, because I might be a very positive booster kind of personality, and you might unfortunately be interviewed by a curmudgeon who is having a bad day, and we wouldn't want that to really affect the process too much.
I guess the more interviews the interviewers are doing, they get a certain understanding of how that interviewer is rating the candidates.
I tell people, one of the things I'm happy with over the years, they used to, the form we submit after interviews used to ask us to judge the candidate's sense of humor. And I'm glad they took that off, because I never understood if that meant if they laughed at my jokes or if they told me good jokes.
Yeah, yeah, that seems like a difficult one. So what happens afterwards? What's the next step?
The next step from the candidate's perspective is doing something that's very difficult when you're so focused on it, and then that's waiting patiently, and unless you have something considerable happening in your career where it's worth updating the admissions staff, basically waiting. There's very little you can do.
Okay. And then so typically you would get either an accept or a rejection or a wait list.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
I could have answered that question better, to be honest. Dates are on the website when all the decisions will be communicated, and you should receive a phone call that day, either telling you you've been accepted, rejected, or waitlisted. And that is for each round. This particular year, due to the increased volume of applications, in a normal year, we tell people not to apply to round 3 if they're from outside the United States, because their visas won't be processed in time. And this particular year is probably a mistake for anyone from any part of the world to apply in round 3.
The increase of applications has been drastic, and has made the all of the rounds just so much more competitive.
Right. And I think we've all seen candidates who in a normal year would definitely have been interviewed or probably been accepted by schools getting rejected.
Yes, that's correct. Do you have any last advice for applicants applying to Kellogg?
I think my 2 pieces of advice would be, number 1, the same thing I've heard when I've asked the exact same question to the admissions directors at Kellogg, and that is be authentic. Don't try to tell us, don't tell us what you think we want to hear. Tell us what you really want to be, what you really want to do, and why you really want to come here. And the other thing I would say is if you connect with your interviewer, and he or she has the kind of personality where you think it might be a boost. There's a great book called The 2-Hour Job Search by one of the Career Management Center at Fuqua's directors that I think is fantastic. The groups alumni into 3 buckets: the curmudgeons, the obligates, and the boosters. If you read the book, and if you have an interview with a booster, keep that relationship going for decades, because and try to become a booster yourself if it isn't against your personality type.
That's wonderful advice. Yeah. Very good advice. I think that's absolutely true. There's no reason why the interview should just be, that one moment in your life and then never have contact with that person again. I think maintaining contact and letting your interviewer know what happened, and giving your interviewer also a sense of closure.
Yeah, I think even though the conversation might be only 30 minutes, I think the longest interview I ever had was 3 hours. But I did all my interviews at a local pub in Sao Paulo. So after you get one round of beer in you, the conversation gets more interesting. But some of those people I've kept in contact with for 10, 20. There's someone I interviewed in Peru who's now a director at Blackstone, where I interviewed him back in, I think, 1993, and we still keep in touch. So I think that is one of the best things about business schools, and the fact you can meet some amazingly bright, interesting people who you have affinities with. And I think it's a shame that a lot of people go through these wonderful programs and then they kind of drop off the alumni map.
Absolutely.
So as a club leader,
I can see your alumni hat coming back on.
I'm sure I'm going to end up on the board in the alumni club here, and I'm living in Spain as of about 2 months ago. And when I move to Madrid, I'll definitely be on the board there. Don't waste the opportunity to become a really engaged alum.
Yeah, it's not just about giving of yourself, but I think you gain so much from the contacts and just, staying part of that community.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, I've been actually recounted, but the last time I checked, I'd traveled to 35 different countries where I'd gone out for lunch, dinner, or beers with a Kellogg alum I didn't know before I'd contact. Before I hadn't known before I sent him an email saying I was going to visit his country or her country.
Amazing.
And it's wonderful to travel and talk to someone who can talk to you about local culture, politics, marketing, everything going on there, because you normally don't have that opportunity when you visit a country as a tourist. You talk to taxi driver, you get all your opinions come from taxi drivers and the hotel reception staff. And to talk to someone that also went to the same program as you, who can really deep dive into what's going on in China or in Myanmar or wherever it is just fantastic.
Wonderful advice.
Wonderful parts of being part of an alumni network.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Willie. This was really, really helpful, and you shared some really great insights with us, which I know will be really helpful for our listeners.
Well, and thank you for your time and all the wonderful questions too.
Bye, Willie.
Okay, take care, Malvina.